Heyo, you're from the Neighborhood Quarter Guy here, and today I'd like to talk about free-to-play. Now, I recently saw an article about King, the developers of Candy Crush Saga, saying that eventually all video game companies will have to migrate to the free-to-play model. While I don't see that happening, ever, I mean, not completely anyway, I don't hate the free-to-play model in and of itself. You see, there are instances where the free-to-play model has been done right. What I don't like to see in the free-to-play model is stuff like, timers and paywalls that restrict your gaming experience and essentially make the game feel like it's pay to win. Two examples that I know of a free-to-play model done right that are highly successful are Team Fortress 2 and League of Legends. Team Fortress 2, I feel, does it right because a lot of item drops that are usually paid for can also be found randomly throughout gameplay. And the various weapons in the game feel like side grades more than upgrades. It's like, no weapon is inherently better or worse than any other, for the most part anyway. Each one has their own pros and cons that make them more balanced. League of Legends works because, in my opinion, it works, and one of the things that makes it work, in my opinion, is that the game gives you an alternate method of acquiring many of the game's elements, like unlocking new champions, unlocking runes. They offer what the game calls influence points through normal gameplay. Many of the things in the game can also be bought with real money, but the only things that can only be bought with real money, which is used... Oh, actually, it's not actually real money, it's Riot points that are bought with real money, but it's still essentially real money. The only things that can only be bought with Riot points are things that are not essential to the game, like new skins for champions and rune pages and probably a few other things that I probably forgot about. But that's what I like about the business model of League of Legends. It makes it so you can earn new champions instead of just having to buy them. And it doesn't feel like it's pay to win. Which brings me to an idea I recently had. You see, Nintendo has recently dipped their toe into the water of the free-to-play model with two games in particular, both for the 3DS eShop. The first one being Steel Diver Sub-Wars, which has the essential functions in the free version, but more of the bells and whistles in the premium version. The other is Rusty's Real Deal Baseball, which allows you to haggle with the in-game character and essentially give you the chance to pay less for the minigames within the package. But recently, that got me thinking. A franchise that Nintendo owns has gotten my interest, and based on the concept of the franchise, I actually think it could work really well in the free-to-play space if done right. That franchise being Custom Robo. The idea of the franchise is that you have a robot, which you equip with various parts that fall into three categories: guns, bombs, and pods. You equip your base model with the items you want to use it with, and then you go into battle. I see this working as a free-to-play game. If done right, of course. Here's my idea. You have... The initial download of the game comes with a few base models and a few sets of base parts. And through either gameplay or real purchases, you could earn more models and more parts. They could be earned through battle points, through normal gameplay, or through your general eShop funds. New parts and models can be introduced on a regular basis, keeping things fresh, and updates could be used to balance out parts that gamers find to be overpowered or useless. It would also have to have online play for normal player matches and ranked matches, as well as playing against computers. If this is done right, I think it could be a real successful endeavor for Nintendo alongside their other franchises. Or it could be a potential flop and I have no idea what I'm talking about. So, if you have any ideas of what franchises could adapt to the free-to-play model if done right, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Anyways, on to user questions. First one comes from Obsidious Man, who asks, will you ever do a top 10 Xenoblade Chronicles or Wonderful 101 boss battles, or any other topic from those games? The thought has indeed crossed my mind a few times. Someone attempted to do a top 10 Xenoblade Chronicles boss battles list, but never finished it. Probably because the first part of that list was like 45 minutes long. That is way too long for just 5 boss battles. Really? Meanwhile, the Wonderful 101 has a lot I could talk about. I mean, the characters are really likable for the most part, and even some that aren't likable at first become likable later on. The boss battles are epic. I love those boss battles. But in all honesty, the topic I'd be most likely to cover in a list like that would be top 7 wonderful ones, which I may do at some point. Trust me, I would have a lot of fun doing that. Next question is JohnnyAn399, who asks, what are your thoughts on the new BlazBlue characters in Chrono Phantasma? Let me list them off one by one. Amane... Well, I don't actually own the game right now, but my initial impressions of these characters were like as follows. First, Amane. He kind of creeps me out. Kind of like, it's just his whole manner and personality just don't sit well with me. Fighting style looks pretty interesting, though. Bullet. Definitely seems like a kind of fan service character. Not too much, but her fighting style looks really blistering and fast-paced and really hard-hitting. But not as hard-hitting as the next guy, Azrael. Seriously, that guy looks like a total beefcake. Seems like sort of like the character antithesis of Bang Shishigami. He's like a guy who lives to fight, and he's a total brute. Let's see, other characters announced. Yuki Terumi. Just another form of Hazama! I hate that guy! And I don't think his fighting style really sits well with me, though his Astral looks pretty damn awesome. Kagura Mutsuki. That looks like the kind of guy who just make me laugh because of how obvious of a womanizer he is. I mean, even in the aftermath of his Astral, he has time to catch a woman in his arms. Yeah, that guy looks like a lot of fun. And finally, the elephant or anthro in the room, Kokinoe, or as the fan base has chosen to name her, Brokanoe. Yeah, she has been apparently overpowered since she was introduced as a DLC character. However, thankfully, much to the appreciation of the fan base, she's getting rebalanced. Thank God for that. Also, her Astral is probably the most overkill I have ever seen. I mean, she drops a friggin' meteor. I mean, well, you know what they say? No kill like overkill! Hopefully, once I get the game at some point, and I probably will at some point, I'll have a better understanding of how well the characters play and how much I enjoy playing as them. But until then. Next question comes from PokeSega64, who asks, what do you think of the Mega Man Star Force series? Oh god. I really think the Star Force games get way too much hate. Yeah, it seems like a knockoff of the Battle Network games, but really, it's more like a successor. I mean, the gameplay is very similar, although rather a bit simplified. But I like how the characters develop in the series, especially Geo, the main protagonist. I mean, he started as a depressed loner, but thanks to his interactions with Omegasys and eventually other characters, he became a friendly and reliable hero. I also liked how the games utilized the online functionality of the DS. The Brother Band system, it worked really well, in my opinion. Yeah, Star Force is still my least favorite of the 7 Mega Man generations, but honestly, I can't hate it. If I make like top 7 Mega Man generations, I'll go into more depth there. Next question comes from Madcat MK6, who asks, what is the rarest game you own? Right now, I'd say Xenoblade Chronicles. I mean, Xenoblade Chronicles is a hard-to-find game for the most part. Mainly because of the fact that it was a GameStop exclusive. Seriously, Nintendo? Were you really so desperate that you had to, rely on GameStop to market your game? Having such a narrow marketing base really hurts the sales of your game. And it's like, on Amazon, I've seen that game go for upwards of $100. I just wish more people played that game. Seriously, the game is awesome. Also, shout for Super Smash Bros. 4! Final question comes from Golden14 Wolf, who asks, do you plan to review Chrono Phantasma? Yeah, I'd have to play the game first.